My name is Mia Carter. I'm 32 years old and I build artificial intelligence in the heart of San Francisco. I live in a high-rise apartment in Soma, just a few blocks from the Bay, where the glow of computer screens has kept me company far longer than any human voice. People think coding is cold, logical, sterile. But for me, every line of code was a prayer, a way to prove myself worthy, to create something they couldn't ignore. Because for as long as I can remember, I've carried a question deep in my chest. What does it really take to belong to a family? The story I'm about to tell you begins with something as small as a train ticket. A canceled ticket that, though I didn't know it yet, would turn my life upside down and set me on the path of betrayal, revenge, and an empire I never thought I'd own. But before the betrayal came the hope. That desperate, fragile hope that maybe this time things would finally be different. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in the Mission District, the smell of burnt coffee drifting from a mug I'd forgotten hours ago, tabs open across my laptop screen. Flights, hotel bookings, itinerary spreadsheets. All color-coded, all perfect. I'd spent weeks planning a Hawaiian vacation for my adoptive family. $20,000. Money I could have put toward my own future, my startup, my dreams. But no, I funneled it into them. Because I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this trip would be the glue that held us together. I pictured it so vividly. Ellen, my adoptive mother, lounging on a beach chair with her wide-brimmed hat, pretending not to notice when Ryan, my older brother, ordered another round of cocktails he couldn't really afford. Lisa, the youngest, squealing with laughter as she splashed in the waves, her camera flashing for the perfect Instagram story. Me. I'd be right there with them, a real Carter, not just the tag-along, not the outsider peering through glass. I imagined us eating shaved ice under the sunset, our laughter tangled in the warm island breeze. For once, the photographs wouldn't place me at the edge of the frame. I'd be in the center like I belonged. I can still see the pile of new luggage I bought stacked neatly by the door. Their names stitched in sleek monograms, mine tucked among them like a promise. I ran my hands over the handles, feeling the smooth leather, inhaling that new suitcase smell. It wasn't just luggage, it was my ticket to acceptance. I remember whispering to myself, this trip was gonna be it, the moment I finally felt like I belonged. In the weeks leading up, I replayed fragments of the past, both sweet and bitter. I thought of the Christmas when I maxed out a credit card to cover gifts for everyone, only for them to joke that I was trying too hard. I remembered Ryan borrowing money to pay off a car loan, promising to pay me back, then posting photos of a new watch instead. Lisa thanking me for covering her student loan installment, calling me the best friend ever. Not sister. Not family. Friend. But still, I clung to the scraps of closeness, convinced the next gesture, the next sacrifice would finally tip the scales. That's why I poured so much into this trip. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a stage I built with palm trees and ocean as the backdrop, for us to finally play the role of family. I told myself stories late at night, scrolling through hotel photos. Maybe Ryan would finally say he was proud of me. Maybe Ellen would smile and call me her daughter without hesitation. Maybe Lisa would look at me with sisterly affection instead of thin gratitude. Maybe. And then there was the launch. The startup I'd built from scraps of code in my studio apartment was finally stepping into the light. $30 million on the line. The timing was perfect. The vacation would show unity, the launch would show power, and together they would see me, not as an outsider but as the keystone of everything. They'd have to, wouldn't they? I remember the Amtrak station the morning we were supposed to leave. The air was sharp with the smell of coffee and diesel, announcements crackling overhead. I arrived early, my arms full of printed tickets, careful checklists folded in my pocket. I was buzzing, practically glowing like a kid on Christmas morning. My family would arrive any minute, and for once I'd be the hero, the one who held it all together. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see it. The bustling platform, the rolling suitcases, the flashes of sunlight through high glass windows. I heard laughter nearby and turned, half expecting it to be them. I held my breath, bracing for that first moment when we'd all stand together, ready to board the train as one. My train. My plan. My chance. But that's not what happened. No, that canceled ticket was waiting to strike like a knife between my ribs. And when it did, the illusion shattered. Everything I thought I knew about family, about belonging, about myself. It collapsed in a single heartbeat. But I'll get to that. For now, all you need to know is that on the day they left me standing on that platform, the seed of revenge was planted. And when they came back for the launch, standing in front of the cameras and investors, I was in the front row with someone they never expected. My ally. My weapon. The one person who would help me turn their denial of me into their ultimate undoing. Who was that ally? Well, that's a story for another part. For now, remember this. It all started with a ticket. A ticket that vanished, a ticket that betrayed, a ticket that gave me the power to take everything they tried to keep from me. The morning light poured through the vaulted glass ceiling of the Amtrak station, fractured into shards of gold across the polished floor. I arrived early as always, suitcase wheels clicking against the tiles, my heart beating faster than the departure board's ticking numbers. The smell of strong coffee drifted from the kiosk by the entrance, blending with the metallic tang of train brakes outside. For a moment I thought, this is it. The beginning of the trip that would finally stitch me into the fabric of my family. I clutched the tickets I'd printed the night before, 4 slips of paper that felt like keys to a new life. Ellen, Ryan, Lisa, and me. I checked them again even though I'd checked them 5 times already. Everything was perfect. Seats together, meals pre-ordered, luggage tagged. I wasn't just part of this family anymore. I was leading us. I was the hero. When they arrived, the noise of the station seemed to dull around them. Ellen's heels clicked sharply as she approached, her pearl earrings glinting in the morning sun. Ryan dragged his suitcase behind him, phone glued to his hand, while Lisa snapped selfies with her oversized sunglasses perched high on her head. They barely looked at me, but I told myself it didn't matter. Soon they'd see the effort I'd put in. Soon they'd have to see me. Here, I said, my voice bubbling with excitement as I handed out the tickets. Everything's taken care of. Seats together, first class. You don't need to worry about a thing. Ellen smiled vaguely, the kind of smile you give a waiter when they set down the right order. Lisa murmured a distracted thanks, while adjusting her hair for another photo. Ryan finally pocketed his phone, taking his ticket from me with an exaggerated sigh. You really went all out, huh? He said, though there was no gratitude in his tone. I forced a laugh, brushing it off. Yeah, well, it's worth it. We're going to remember this forever. For a brief second I let myself believe it. The chatter of announcements echoed overhead, the whistle of an arriving train cut through the air, and I imagined us boarding together, our laughter drowned out by the roar of the engine. But then Ryan frowned, squinting at his phone. His voice came casual, too casual. There's a problem. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He looked at me, then back at his phone. Your ticket. I must have glitched the system when picking the meal options. It cancelled yours. I blinked, waiting for the punchline. None came. That's impossible. I checked everything last night. Ryan shrugged, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. Well, it's not here. The train's sold out. Nothing I can do. I felt the ground sway beneath me, the noise of the station swelling into a deafening roar. So what do we do? Ellen stepped forward, her tone dripping with manufactured sympathy. Sweetie, we can't all miss this. The tickets are non-refundable and you know how hard you worked for them. We'll go ahead and you can meet us later, maybe fly out. Her words were smooth, polished, but her eyes held no hesitation. Lisa tugged at Ellen's sleeve, whispering something I couldn't catch, but I saw the smirk playing on her lips. I'll fix this, I said, panic rising in my chest. Give me a second, I'll talk to the agent. Ryan cut me off, shaking his head with mock regret. No time. The train's boarding now. We can't risk missing it for this. For me. And just like that they turned. Ellen adjusted her bag, Lisa giggled at something on her phone, and Ryan led the way, shoulders squared in silent triumph. I reached out, my voice cracking, wait? But my words were swallowed by the blare of the whistle. The crowd surged forward and in a blur of movement, my family disappeared into the sea of passengers. I stood frozen, the paper tickets limp in my hand, watching their backs grow smaller and smaller until they vanished through the gate. In slow motion I saw Ryan glance over his shoulder. Just once. His expression wasn't regret, it was satisfaction. That's when the truth settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't an accident. The cancelled ticket wasn't some careless glitch. It was deliberate. They had planned to leave me. The station pressed in around me. The hiss of the train, the shuffle of hurried footsteps, the hollow echo of rolling suitcases, and yet I'd never felt so alone. My suitcase stood beside me untouched. My heart pounded, each beat asking the same question. How could they just walk away like I was nothing? I stayed there long after the train pulled out, the empty track mocking me with silence. Strangers bustled past, their lives full, their families intact, while I stood rooted in place, the outsider I'd always feared I was. The trip I thought would bind us together had exposed the truth. I was never part of their family, not in the way that mattered. And in that raw, aching moment, the betrayal carved itself into me so deeply I knew I would never forget it. I didn't know why they did it or what they gained from leaving me behind. But one thing was certain. This was no mistake. And if it wasn't a mistake, then it was a message. A message I'd spend the rest of my life answering. The lift door closed with a dull thud, shutting out the noise of the station but not the ache in my chest. The driver asked where I was headed and my voice cracked slightly as I said, Mission District. The car eased forward and the city blurred past the window, its morning rhythm unfazed by the small tragedy unraveling inside me. My suitcase sat beside me like dead weight, full of clothes meant for beaches I'd never see. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling, and opened TikTok. The algorithm knew me too well. The first video was theirs. Ellen, Ryan, and Lisa framed against the wide Amtrak windows, grinning like they had just won the lottery. Ryan held the camera, his voice booming with excitement, while Lisa twirled dramatically in the aisle. Ellen gave her practiced smile, one hand resting on her pearl earrings as though the world should be impressed. I turned up the volume, though it felt like pressing a knife into an open wound. Their laughter filled the car, bouncing against the windows, and I wanted to scream. That should have been me. I planned this. I paid for this. I swiped to the next video. Lisa's story. She zoomed in on a glass of champagne, the caption, "Family vacation begins. Couldn't be happier." Family. The word glared at me like neon. I wasn't in the video, not even in the hashtags. I wasn't part of the frame. I wasn't part of them. The city outside blurred, Mission's colorful murals flashing past, but I was somewhere else, dragged backward into memories I had buried under years of hope. I saw Ryan again years ago, pacing in my apartment, his hands shaking as he confessed his car was about to be repossessed. I'd written the check without hesitation, assuring him, "It's family. You don't have to worry." He'd hugged me quickly, already planning his next night out, and days later, a photo surfaced online of him flashing a new watch. I hadn't seen a repayment, not even a thank you card. I remembered Lisa crying over her mounting student loans. I had logged into my account and transferred the money, listening to her gush, "You're such a good friend, Mia." Friend. Not sister. Not family. Good friend. That word stuck like a thorn under my skin. Aunt Ellen, always polished, always composed, once whispered that the mortgage was suffocating her. I'd sent a lump sum, wiping out months of debt. Her gratitude came in the form of a smile at a dinner party where she introduced me as someone very dear to us. Not daughter. Never daughter. I thought the money was a bridge, that it would carry me closer to them, but looking back it was a leash. I wasn't a member of the family. I was their safety net. Their bank. Their tool. The lift hit a bump, jerking me back into the present. My phone was still in my hand, the screen glowing with their joy. I stared at their faces. Faces so at ease, so certain I'd always be on the outside. My eyes burned, but no tears fell. Instead there was a quiet shift, a cold clarity. All those years I was just their safety net. Never truly family. I locked the phone and shoved it back into my pocket, but something heavier pulled at me from the seat beside me. My tote bag. I reached in, digging past receipts and notebooks, until my fingers brushed against the brittle edge of an envelope. It was an old photograph, folded neatly inside. Grandma's handwriting was scrawled on the back, faded but unmistakable. The photo was of a Christmas years ago. Everyone posed around the tree, their smiles stretched wide. Ellen stood tall in the center, Ryan's arm draped around Lisa, their bodies angled toward each other. Me. I was at the edge, half-shadowed, clutching a gift I had bought for them. Almost cropped out. Almost forgotten. But what froze me wasn't the photo itself. It was the note underneath. A slip of paper written in Grandma's looping script. "Protect her. Don't let them take what's rightfully hers." My breath caught. What did that mean? I flipped it over, reading the words again as though repetition might reveal their secret. Rightfully mine? What was she talking about? Grandma had always been the only one who treated me like I belonged. She'd squeeze my hand and call me my girl, not friend. She'd press extra cookies into my palm when no one was looking. And when she died, the family swept through her belongings like vultures, dividing everything without question. I hadn't asked for anything, not even a trinket. But now I wondered. Had she left something behind for me? Something they didn't want me to know? The lift slowed to a stop outside my apartment. I slipped the note and photo back into the envelope, clutching it like a lifeline. The driver offered a polite smile, unaware he'd just carried me through the burial of one life and the beginning of another. I walked into my apartment, the air heavy with silence. The family photos on my wall felt different now, each one a reminder of my place on the periphery. I dropped my suitcase in the corner and sat on the couch, the note still in my hand. Their betrayal at the station had split something open inside me, but this discovery, this hint of a hidden truth, fanned the spark of something else. Anger, yes. But also a gnawing curiosity. What had Grandma meant? What had they kept from me? I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain. The family I thought I had was never real. And maybe, just maybe, buried somewhere in the lies they told, was a secret that could change everything. The office was nearly empty when I returned that night, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears after a long day. Only the hum of servers and the faint hiss of the espresso machine settling in the corner kept me company. The space smelled faintly of roasted beans and warm plastic from overworked monitors. 3 screens glowed in front of me, casting pale light over stacks of notebooks, tangled cords, and a half-finished sandwich gone cold. Outside the tall windows, the San Francisco skyline blurred under fog, streetlights flickering like restless fireflies. I sank into my chair and let the weight of the betrayal at the station settle again. It pulsed at the back of my mind like an open wound. But here, surrounded by the machines I had built and the code only I understood, the ache hardened into something sharper. This was my world. This was proof of my worth. And maybe, just maybe, it would be my weapon. I pulled up the project files, endless lines of code scrolling past. I knew each one like a heartbeat. Brackets, comments, logic trees. Mine. Not Ryan's, not Ellen's, not Lisa's. No matter how loudly they claimed ownership, this was my creation. My legacy. Yet as I debugged, frustration surged. Careless edits leapt out at me. Inefficient loops, missing safeguards, even typos that could crash entire processes. They had paraded this work in front of investors as if it were theirs. But behind the curtain, I had done the heavy lifting. Pathetic, I muttered under my breath, clicking through their revisions. I opened the contracts next, polished PDFs stuffed with legal jargon. Investors loved waving them around like holy scripture, but I knew better. I scrolled, eyes narrowing, until I found the details only I remembered embedding. Clauses tucked neatly into the framework. Small cracks invisible to anyone else. Backdoors I'd coded when paranoia whispered that my family might try to push me out. At the time I told myself it was insurance. Now staring at the faint highlights I realized what they truly were. Leverage. A slow, bitter smile tugged at my lips. They thought I was powerless. They thought a cancelled ticket erased me. But here, in these documents and lines of logic, was evidence of who really held control. I leaned back, rubbed my tired eyes, and whispered into the empty room, "Time to stop being their doormat. Let's see what I can uncover." The silence answered, heavy and still. I looked out at the Bay Bridge, its lights blinking rhythmically through the fog. Somewhere out there I imagined Ryan raising a glass, Ellen perfecting her smile for strangers, Lisa recording another story. They were celebrating the ease with which they'd cast me aside. My fists clenched on the armrests. No more. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the air like a blade. I flinched, heart skipping. The screen lit up, unknown number. I hesitated, thumb hovering. The timing was uncanny. The station, the contracts, the realization, and now this. My gut twisted, but curiosity won. "Hello." My voice was cautious, almost too quiet. "Mia Carter?" The woman's tone was steady, precise, each syllable deliberate. "Yes." "Who's calling?" A pause stretched just long enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. Then, "Zoe Egwin. We met briefly at TechCrunch last year. I've been following your work on the family project. Let's meet." The name jolted something loose in my memory. I saw her face again. Sharp features, eyes that scanned a room as though nothing escaped her. Our encounter had been fleeting, drowned in the chaos of the networking floor. But I remembered her question, soft but piercing. Do you actually get credit for all of this? I hadn't answered then. I couldn't. My pulse quickened. How do you know about the project? I asked, sharper than I intended. Her voice didn't falter. Let's just say people talk. And I listen. You've built something extraordinary, Mia. But you also know something's off. Don't you? The office suddenly felt colder. The monitors glared at me, contracts frozen on the screen, clauses highlighted like warnings. He was right. I had known for years, even if I buried it beneath sacrifice and denial. What do you want? I managed, fighting the tremor rising in my throat. Not over the phone, Zoe said, calm but firm. Blue Bottle Cafe, Mission Street. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Bring nothing. Just yourself. The line went dead before I could respond. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the black screen as the silence roared back into the room. The click of my own heartbeat echoed in my ears. I turned in my chair, facing the monitors again. Code scrolled endlessly, predictable and fair, unlike the world I lived in. But this wasn't code. This was human. Messy. Dangerous. And somehow I felt the tug of inevitability. Zoe Nguyen knew something. Something about me, about the project, maybe even about them. The mystery in her voice replayed over and over. But you also know something's off. Don't you? Yes. I did. I saved my files with deliberate clicks, each one echoing like the closing of a door behind me. The glow of the monitors faded as I powered them down one by one until the office was swallowed in shadow. The smell of burnt coffee lingered, the air heavy with anticipation. I whispered into the dark, tomorrow I'll find out what she really wants. For the first time since the station, the ache in my chest eased, not because I found comfort but because I had found a direction. Pain was turning into fuel. Betrayal into strategy. And if Zoe truly knew enough to call me now, then maybe she held the key to unraveling everything my family thought they had stolen from me. The next morning, the Mission District was alive with the scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans drifting from street corners. I pushed open the door to Blue Bottle Cafe, the little brass bell chiming above me. Inside, sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching motes of dust that danced lazily in the air. The low murmur of conversations blended with the hiss of steaming milk and the rhythmic grind of beans. The place smelled warm, rich like comfort, but my chest felt anything but. I spotted her immediately. Zoe Nguyen sat at a corner table, back straight, a laptop open in front of her, phone face down beside it. She wore a navy blazer over a simple black top, hair pulled back neatly, eyes locked on me the second I walked in. Sharp, assessing, the kind of gaze that didn't just see you but dissected you. I approached slowly, my palms damp despite the cool air. She stood, extending a hand. Mia. Zoe, I replied, shaking it. Her grip was firm, confident, almost electric. Sit. She gestured to the chair across from her. As I slid into it, she reached into her bag and placed a small black USB drive on the wooden table between us. Its presence felt heavier than it should have, like a bullet waiting to fire. What's that? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Proof, she said simply. The word hung there. Proof of what? He pushed the USB toward me. Your brother's been siphoning funds, here's the proof. My throat went dry. I picked it up, the cool plastic pressing against my fingertips, and inserted it into her laptop. Immediately, folders popped open, lines of transactions scrolling across the screen. Numbers, dates, accounts, all leading to one conclusion. Ryan. He had funneled nearly $1.5 million into fake accounts. Small withdrawals at first, hidden under consulting fees, software licenses, vendor invoices. But over time the amounts grew bolder, more reckless. Screenshots of emails confirmed his hand. He hadn't even been careful. I leaned forward, eyes darting across the files, pulse hammering. He was stealing while I funded their lives. While I paid off debts and covered vacations. The cafe noise faded into a dull hum. I could hear only the thud of my heartbeat and the faint clicking of Zoe's nails against the tabletop as she tapped, waiting for my reaction. How blind was I? I whispered, more to myself than to her. Zoe's expression didn't soften. Blind maybe. But not anymore. I scrolled deeper, stumbling upon another document. A letter from a lead investor. Cold Kurt. The words seared into me. Withdrawing support effective immediately due to financial irregularities. The embezzlement wasn't just theft. It was sabotage. It jeopardized everything I had built. Anger ignited, hot and sharp, coursing through me like fire. For years I had carried them, sacrificed for them, begged for scraps of affection. And all the while Ryan had been robbing me, bleeding the project dry, smiling as he pocketed money behind my back. I forced myself to breathe, inhaling the scent of espresso, the buttery sweetness of pastries cooling behind the counter. The normalcy of the cafe mocked the storm raging inside me. Finally, Zoe spoke again, her voice low and measured. The investors don't trust him anymore. He's finished. But your project still has value. With the right move, we can take control. I looked up, searching her face for deception. We. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing. I have connections. I have capital. What I don't have is your expertise or the moral leverage you've unknowingly coded into those contracts. You help me acquire the project, we rebuild, and you walk away with equity. 25%. Untouchable. Independent. The word stunned me. 25%. Not scraps. Not charity. Real power. But another question gnawed at me, sharp and insistent. Where did you get this data? I asked, nodding toward the laptop. No one outside should have access. Her lips curved slightly, not into a smile but into something unreadable. Let's just say Ryan isn't as careful with his secrets as he thinks. People talk. Systems leak. And I know where to listen. The mystery in her tone made my skin prickle. She wasn't telling me everything. But right then I didn't care. Because the files on that USB had already redrawn the lines of my world. I sat back, letting the chair creak under me, staring at the ceiling as if the plaster could steady me. I thought of Ryan's smirk at the train station, the satisfaction in his eyes as the doors closed. I thought of Ellen's polished indifference, Lisa's shallow giggles. All of them complicit in my exclusion, all of them blind to the storm they just unleashed. I looked back at Zoe. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. So what do you say? She asked. My answer came before I even realized it had formed. I'm in. The words left my mouth with a finality that sent a shiver down my spine. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to their betrayal. I was acting, choosing, fighting back. I reached for the USB, pulling it free from the laptop and closing my fingers around it like it was a weapon. Because that's exactly what it was. As I slipped it into my pocket, one thought echoed louder than the cafe chatter, louder than the hiss of the espresso machine, louder than everything else in the world. They stole from me. But now I'll take it all back. The cafe had thinned out by the time Zoe and I sealed our pact. The morning rush had dissolved into a steady quiet, soft jazz humming beneath the occasional clink of ceramic cups. Sunlight stretched across the wooden table where we sat, catching the faint scratches carved into its surface. I could still feel the imprint of her hand against mine from the handshake. Firm, deliberate, leaving no room for hesitation. I'll help you, I said, forcing calm into my voice, even though my heart pounded like a war drum. But no one can know. Not until the launch. Zoe's dark eyes narrowed with approval. Secrecy is survival, Mia. If you want this to work, you need to trust me. And trust yourself. Her tone carried weight, the kind of certainty born from experience. I nodded, slipping the USB deeper into my pocket as if tucking away a weapon. For years I had been the outsider, hovering, silent, begging for scraps. But in that moment I felt something shift. I wasn't begging anymore. I was choosing. The cafe door creaked open behind me, letting in a gust of sharp, cold air. It stirred the napkins stacked by the counter, fluttering them like nervous birds. Zoe's eyes flicked toward the entrance, then back to me. Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. They'll sense something soon. Be ready. I didn't realize how soon she meant. Because the second I stepped onto Mission Street, my phone buzzed violently in my hand. Then again. And again. Ryan's name filled the screen, his smug photo grinning at me as though he already knew something I didn't. I stood still on the sidewalk, the city swirling around me, horns blaring, buses screeching, people brushing past with coffees in hand. Every instinct told me to let it ring, to savor the silence, but my thumb betrayed me. I answered. Mia, Ryan's voice thundered, sharp and full of accusation. You met with Zoe Nguyen, didn't you? My chest tightened. I swallowed the spike of panic and steadied my tone. What are you talking about? Don't play stupid. His voice cut through the noise of the street, loud enough that I had to pull the phone slightly away from my ear. People saw you. You think I wouldn't hear? She's trying to ruin us and you're letting her in. My grip on the phone tightened. She's not trying to ruin us. She's exposing you. Silence followed. Heavy. Electric. And then his tone dropped lower, poisonous. You're not even real family, Mia. Just some charity case we took in. All that money you threw at us? Consider it rent for pretending you belonged. The words didn't just sting, they gutted me. The world around me blurred. Car horns faded, voices dulled, the sunlight dimmed. It was just me standing there with his cruelty ringing in my ears, each syllable carving deeper. I almost whispered it, my voice cracking. After everything I gave you? Ryan's laugh, cold and sharp, answered back. You were useful. A wallet with legs. Don't forget your place. Heat flushed my face. My fingers trembled around the phone. Before I could speak, another voice slipped into the call. Smooth. Polished. Calculated. Ellen. Know your place, dear, she said. Her tone was almost gentle, like velvet covering steel. But it wasn't kindness, it was dismissal. My throat burned. I forced the words out. My place? My place was paying your debts, covering your mistakes, funding your vacations. And after all that, you left me standing on that platform like I was nothing. Ellen sighed softly, the sound practiced like she'd used it on countless people before me. Don't twist this, Mia. We've always taken care of you. But blood is blood. You're not one of us, no matter how much money you spend trying to be. Her words coated me like acid, eating away at the last fragile pieces of hope I had clung to. I saw my reflection in a shop window as I walked past. Shoulders squared, jaw tight, phone pressed to my ear like it was both a lifeline and a weapon. I steadied my voice, letting the fury bleed through. I'm done. Done paying for your acceptance. Done being invisible. Soon you'll see exactly who belongs. On the other end there was a sharp inhale, the sound of Ryan gearing up to spit more venom, but I ended the call before he could. The phone screen went dark in my hand. For a moment I stared at my reflection, my eyes burning, my chest heaving. The words echoed, relentless. Charity case. Not real family. Know your place. I slipped the phone into my pocket and clenched it tight, grounding myself in the chaos of the city. A skateboard clattered across the pavement, laughter spilling from a group of teenagers. The smell of fresh tortillas from a taqueria mingled with car exhaust and roasted coffee drifting down the street. The world kept spinning, alive and indifferent. Inside me something solidified. Their cruelty didn't hollow me out this time. It ignited me. Their denial wasn't the end of my story. It was the match striking against stone. I remembered Zoe's warning. They'll sense something soon. Be ready. He was right. They were circling, scrambling to protect their image, desperate to drag me back into the shadows. But I wasn't the scared girl clutching tickets at the station anymore. I whispered into the fading light. Their words cut deep, but now I'm fighting back. The evening air wrapped around me, cool and certain, like the city itself had heard my vow. For the first time I wasn't afraid of their voices anymore. I wasn't afraid of being exposed. I was ready to expose them. Zoe's office in Palo Alto felt like a different world. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling glass walls, bouncing off polished white floors and casting sharp reflections across sleek, minimalist furniture. Everything in the space hummed with precision. Monitors glowing with shifting graphs, whiteboards layered with color-coded notes, and the faint smell of disinfectant mingling with fresh ink. It was the kind of place where fortunes were mapped and futures rewritten. She led me toward a long glass table that gleamed under recessed lighting. Stacks of binders waited like soldiers, their spines marked with dates and case numbers. Her laptop rested open in the center, glowing softly, the cursor blinking on a page of dense contracts. The leather chair was cold against my skin as I sank into it, nerves and anticipation tangling in my chest. Start here, Zoe said, sliding one of the thick folders toward me. Her tone was calm, but her eyes sharpened with anticipation, as if she already knew what I was about to find. I opened the folder, my fingers brushing over crisp pages. The paper smelled faintly of toner and ink, oddly sterile compared to the weight of what it carried. I let my eyes scan the familiar words: shareholder agreements, stock allocations, indemnity clauses. I'd skimmed them before, back when trust was my weakness. But now betrayal had honed my vision. Every detail felt sharper, like the edges could cut me if I wasn't careful. Time slipped away as I poured through the pages, highlighter in hand, the scratch of ink on paper filling the quiet between us. My pulse quickened. Somewhere in this jungle of jargon, I sensed a thread waiting to be pulled. Then, buried in the dense paragraphs of an addendum, I saw it. A line that looked like code. My code. I froze. At first I thought fatigue had tricked me, that I was seeing patterns where none existed. But as I traced the sentence with my finger, recognition sank in. This wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate. I had written it years ago. A safeguard I'd slipped in almost absent-mindedly when integrating the system with our contracts. A what-if clause. If any shareholder engaged in financial misconduct, their shares would automatically default to the original lead programmer. Me. I read it again. And again. My chest tightened as the reality unfolded. I wasn't just protected. I was already the majority owner. My breath hitched. For a moment the office around me blurred. The glass walls, the diagrams, Zoe watching me with that knowing look. All I could see was every cruel moment replaying in my mind. Ryan sneering at me, Ellen telling me to know my place, Lisa giggling as though I didn't exist. And here it was, hidden in black and white, undeniable. The power they thought belonged to them had been mine all along. Zoe leaned in, her lips curving into a sharp line. You see it, don't you? I nodded slowly, my voice barely steady. I built this clause myself, years ago. I didn't even realize. Her smile sharpened into something triumphant. This clause makes you the majority owner already, Mia. Ryan's theft triggered it. He handed you the company with his own greed. The words cracked through me like a gavel. Majority owner. Not charity case. Not outsider. Owner. I sat back, the leather chair creaking beneath me as adrenaline surged through my veins. For the first time the game board tilted in my favor. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was strategy. I held the power all along, I whispered under my breath, the words tasting electric. Now to use it. Zoe's eyes gleamed and she tapped the table with her finger, each knock a drumbeat. We keep this hidden until the launch. On paper it looks like I'm acquiring controlling interest. Your name stays buried in the fine print until the reveal. That way when they stand on stage, smug and certain, you'll step into the spotlight with proof they can't deny. The image flared in my mind, Ellen's practiced smile cracking mid-sentence, Ryan's bravado dissolving, Lisa's shallow laughter choking in her throat. All of them frozen, powerless while the cameras rolled. Still, a thorn of unease lodged in my chest. How did this survive? They had lawyers combing through everything. They should have seen it. Zoe tilted her head, thoughtful, her dark hair catching the fluorescent light. Maybe they underestimated you. Or maybe someone else made sure it stayed. Her words lingered in the sterile air, planting a seed of suspicion that rooted deep. Who had preserved it? Grandma with her cryptic note to protect me? An overlooked advisor? Or was it simply arrogance, that they dismissed me so completely they missed the trap in their own foundation? I let the questions hang unanswered as Zoe stood and crossed to the whiteboard. She uncapped a marker, the faint squeak echoing as she drew lines and arrows, building a plan. Timelines, press strategies, investor positioning. Her strokes were bold, deliberate, each one tightening the net. The air smelled faintly of dry erase ink now, mixing with the chill of the air conditioning. Outside, Palo Alto's orderly streets gleamed in the afternoon sun, a calm mask over the storm that churned inside me. I watched Zoe map out the battlefield, but my mind was elsewhere. Hearing Ryan's voice mocking me, Ellen's condescending sigh, Lisa's shallow indifference. Their words had scarred me, but now those scars felt like armor. When Zoe capped the marker and set it down, the silence in the office was deafening. My eyes returned to the contract, to the clause bold and undeniable. This was my place. Not at the edge of the photo. Not as their scapegoat. Here, in the center. With power they couldn't take back. As I left Zoe's office, the glass doors reflected the late afternoon sun, casting long shadows across the floor. My own shadow stretched ahead of me, sharp and certain, like a blade ready to strike. The clause was mine. The power was mine. But one question trailed me as I walked into the fading light. Who had ensured it stayed hidden all this time? I didn't know. Not yet. But I carried the mystery with me, humming like a secret promise. And as the launch drew closer, anticipation buzzed under my skin. Soon the stage would be lit, the cameras rolling, and they would discover the truth too late. The power they stole had always been mine. The cafe was unremarkable, the kind of place I'd normally pass without noticing. Just a corner shop with outdoor seating and the faint smell of burnt espresso drifting into the fog-thick San Francisco air. I had stopped there for a quick coffee, nothing more, but fate had other plans. As I settled into a seat near the window, laptop closed and mind running through Zoe's timeline for the launch, a shadow fell across my table. "Mia," a familiar voice said, smooth and rehearsed. I looked up and there he was, Ryan, dressed in a tailored jacket, cufflinks glinting in the weak afternoon light. But his face betrayed him. The smirk he usually carried had cracks in it, like paint chipping off cheap plaster. He pulled out a chair before I could answer, sliding into it with practiced ease, as though this cafe were his stage and I his reluctant audience. For a moment, silence hung between us, punctuated only by the hiss of steaming milk behind the counter and the clink of spoons against porcelain. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen him in person since the phone call. The one where he'd spat the words, "charity case," at me like poison. "You know," he began, leaning back with false casualness, "this place reminds me of that diner we used to sneak into as kids. Remember? The one by the old train tracks." His voice softened, feigning nostalgia. "You always ordered pancakes with way too much syrup." I'd steal a bite, pretend it was gross, but I loved it. I didn't respond. My hands wrapped around the coffee cup, letting the heat seep into my skin, grounding me. His attempt at sentimentality felt like a hook, baited and waiting. He leaned in, dropping the act. "Look, I need your help. Things are complicated. Investors pulled out, bills are piling up. You know how it is. I just need $3 million to keep us afloat." The number hit me like a slap. $3 million. As though I could just peel it off like a bandage and hand it over. His voice grew more desperate, but there was an edge. Anger woven through the begging. "Don't act like you can't," he pressed, eyes narrowing. "You've always had the talent, the skills. That's why everyone praised you. Do you know what that felt like? Watching you get everything handed to you while I—" He trailed off, jaw tightening. And there was the truth behind the mask. Not desperation. Jealousy. The same jealousy that had simmered since childhood. I saw flashes in my mind. Ryan rolling his eyes when teachers praised me, Ellen brushing me aside at family dinners, Lisa giggling when I stayed late coding while they partied. Years of being tolerated, never embraced. "You think I enjoyed being the one everyone compared me to?" he continued, voice rising. "Your grades, your ideas, your stupid code, always better. Always the golden child." He leaned closer, his breath bitter with espresso. "I envied you, Mia. And I still do." The cafe noises dulled as his words sank in. He wasn't here for reconciliation, not even for money. He was here to remind me of his power, or at least the illusion of it. I stayed silent, letting him twist in his own bitterness. His hand slammed against the table, rattling my untouched cup. Heads turned. He lowered his voice quickly, teeth clenched. "Don't ignore me. You owe us." I finally met his gaze, steady and calm. Inside, my heart pounded, but I let my stillness speak louder than any words. Because I wasn't going to give him what he wanted. Fear, validation, or money. He sat back, studying me with suspicion, frustration darkening his features. "Fine," he muttered. "Pretend you're above us now. But remember, family doesn't just disappear." I watched him push away from the table, shoulders stiff, mask slipping further with every step toward the door. For once, I didn't chase after him. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain myself. I let him walk out into the fog, his figure swallowed by the gray. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted my cup, the coffee now lukewarm. The bitterness coated my tongue, but it steadied me. Ryan's words had cut deep in the past, but now they only confirmed what I already knew. His jealousy had always been there. And now it would be his downfall. When I returned home, I stood before the mirror in my apartment, the city lights flickering beyond the window. I pulled out the outfit I had chosen days ago but hadn't dared to wear. A bold red jumpsuit. The fabric slid over my skin, smooth and defiant, the color blazing like a challenge. It wasn't just clothing, it was a declaration. Red for power. Red for warning. Red for the blood they claimed mattered more than me. I studied my reflection, shoulders squared, lips pressed into a determined line. Tomorrow I wouldn't just attend their launch. I would claim it. Ryan thought his pleas and manipulations could rattle me, but all he'd done was sharpen my resolve. As I turned away from the mirror, slipping my phone into my clutch, a single thought carried me into the night air. His jealousy was always there, now it's his downfall. The fog rolled heavier over San Francisco, streetlights glowing like halos in the mist. Somewhere out there Ryan was plotting his next move, but for the first time I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The Moscone Center was buzzing long before the lights dimmed. Spotlights swept across the vast hall, glittering off glass panels and polished steel. Banners stretched from ceiling to floor, bold letters proclaiming, "The future of family. The future of tech." The irony of those words made my stomach twist, but I held my head high as I walked through the crowd. The faint smell of perfume and fresh-cut flowers mingled with the sharper tang of electronics warming under stage lights. Everywhere I looked, faces shone with expectation. Investors in tailored suits murmured over champagne, journalists held their cameras poised, and engineers clustered with notepads ready. I slipped into my seat in the front row, the red of my jumpsuit catching the light like a silent signal. I wasn't hiding anymore. The stage lit up and Ellen stepped forward first. She was immaculate as always, draped in pale silk that glowed under the lights, her smile sharp and curated. She placed her hand over her heart, projecting warmth that wasn't there. "Family," she began, her voice smooth as glass, "is about blood, loyalty, and sacrifice. Tonight we celebrate not just innovation but the bonds that make us strong." Applause rippled through the hall, but her eyes flicked toward me, quick as a knife. That one glance said it all. This was her chance to erase me, to declare to the world that I had never been one of them. My nails pressed into my palms, but I stayed still, forcing myself to absorb every word. Ryan followed, striding out with false bravado, his suit tailored to perfection but his arrogance even sharper. "Our family," he boomed, "has poured heart and soul into this project. We've built something that will change the world. And we've done it together." The word "together" landed heavy, deliberate. He paused, then let his smirk widen. "Though not everyone here deserves that word. Some outsiders try to attach themselves where they don't belong." The audience shifted uncomfortably. I felt dozens of eyes flick toward me. My chest tightened, but I held my gaze steady, refusing to flinch. Ryan gestured to the security team stationed by the side doors. "She's here tonight. Watching. Pretending. Get her out." Gasps broke across the crowd as guards began moving down the aisle toward me. Cameras swiveled. For one second, fear clawed at my throat. But then, Zoe moved. She stepped into the light from the side of the stage, her presence sudden, commanding. "Before you throw her out," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "perhaps you'd like to see the truth." She raised her hand and the giant screens flared to life. Line after line of financial records rolled across them, Ryan's embezzlement laid bare for every eye in the room. The numbers glowed stark against the dark background. Fake accounts, transfers siphoned millions. Gasps turned into shouts. Phones lifted, recording everything. Investors leaned forward, faces paling. Ellen's mask faltered, her perfect smile cracking. Ryan's voice broke as he tried to shout over the chaos. "Lies. Fabrications." But the evidence kept scrolling, relentless, undeniable. I stood slowly, the red fabric of my jumpsuit catching the camera lights. My heart pounded, but my voice came out clear, steady. "You wanted me gone, Ryan. But what you didn't realize," I held up the contract Zoe had slipped into my hands, "is that I already own 65% of this company." The words hit like thunder. The room fell into stunned silence. Then a wave of whispers, frantic and disbelieving. Ryan's face drained of color, his bravado collapsing in real time. Ellen stumbled back a step, her hand gripping the podium as though it might steady her. "This is for every slight," I said, my voice sharp, echoing across the hall. "Every time you shoved me to the edges of the picture. Watch me take my place at the center." Phones flashed, cameras zoomed. The audience was no longer theirs. It was mine. I saw journalists scribbling furiously, investors recording videos, strangers with eyes wide as though watching a live drama unravel before them. Ryan tried to lunge forward, but security held him back now. The same guards he had called on moments earlier turned their eyes to me, hesitation clear on their faces. He shouted, his words desperate, "She's lying. She's nothing but." I cut him off. I'm the majority owner. And you're finished. The hall erupted. Cheers from some corners, murmurs of disbelief from others, but all of it captured, streamed, immortalized on 100 devices. Ellen tried to speak again, her voice trembling as she repeated, "Family is about blood and loyalty." But no one was listening anymore. For the first time in my life I stood above them, not as their charity case, not as their shadow, but as the one with the power. The irony was perfect. Ryan's greed had triggered the very claws that destroyed him. As the noise swelled, I caught sight of a small glint in the corner of the hall, what looked like a hidden camera, its red light blinking faintly. Who had set it up? A journalist? An investor? Or someone closer watching everything unfold with their own plan in motion? The thought lodged in my mind even as the wave of victory carried me higher. The stage had fallen silent beneath my words, but the story was far from over. Backstage at the Moscone Center, the air felt different than the blinding energy of the main hall. Out there, spotlights blazed and applause still echoed from the explosive reveal. In here, the light was harsher, flat fluorescence buzzing faintly, illuminating every crease in the faces of the people who once towered over me. The smell of stale coffee and printer ink clung to the narrow conference room, mixed with the faint tang of sweat from too many bodies pressed into too small a space. A stack of legal documents waited at the center of the long table, sharp black letters stamped across cream-colored pages that would decide everything. I stood at the head of that table, straight-backed, steady, the red fabric of my jumpsuit feeling like a shield wrapped around me. Across from me, Ryan sat slouched, his eyes dark, lips pressed thin. Ellen tried to hold herself upright, but the tremor in her fingers betrayed her. The lawyers moved with quiet precision, placing pens exactly where they needed to go, their expressions neutral, practiced. "Sign," one of them instructed, sliding the first document across. His tone was professional but unyielding, the sound carrying like a gavel through the tense room. Ryan picked up the pen first. His hand shook as if even the weight of it mocked him. He hesitated, glaring at me as if his defiance could undo the truth already broadcast on the giant screens outside. But the proof of his embezzlement had already sealed his fate. His pen scratched the page in quick, angry lines, the ink slashing like a wound. When he pushed the paper away, Ellen lingered. Her manicured nails tapped lightly on the tabletop, the rhythm uneven. She picked up the pen, hovering over the line as though it might burn her. I saw her chest rise, stall, then fall as she finally pressed the tip to paper. The ink glided smooth, her script elegant even in surrender. When she set the pen down, the click against wood echoed like a verdict. "It's done," I said, my voice steady, though my heart drummed like war inside my chest. Ryan leaned back, crossing his arms, his laugh dry and venomous. "Congratulations. You've destroyed this family." I met his glare without flinching. "No. You destroyed it the moment you treated me like nothing but a paycheck." Ellen's mask cracked, her voice unraveling. "Mia, please, we're family. We can fix this. We can." "Stop." My voice sliced through hers, sharp and cold. "Don't call me family. Not after leaving me at that station. Not after years of using me as your safety net. Not after tonight." Her lips trembled, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of mine. "But you're all we have," she whispered, desperation bleeding into every syllable. I stepped back, refusing the plea. "Not anymore." Silence swallowed the room. Even the lawyers avoided my eyes, their gazes fixed on papers and pens. For years I had begged for belonging, but now the power shifted, final, undeniable. I turned to my assistant standing by the door with a folder of access logs. "Cut them off," I instructed. "Emails, servers, accounts, keys. Everything. Effective immediately." The assistant nodded briskly, already dialing the IT team. Ryan's jaw tightened as the reality landed like a hammer. "And one more thing," I added. "File the restraining order. Tonight." Ellen gasped as though the air had been stolen from her lungs. "Mia, please. We're blood. We raised you." The words sparked something inside me, but it wasn't grief anymore. It was steel. "You raised me to believe I was lucky to have scraps. You raised me to think love had to be bought. That ends now. This isn't about family anymore. It's about survival." The lawyers stacked the signed contracts neatly, sealing them into a leather briefcase. Each page sliding into place sounded like a lock clicking shut, closing a door I had kept open too long. I took a deep breath and turned to my advisors who had gathered quietly at the edge of the room. Announce the new fund. $2 million for orphan scholarships. Effective this quarter. They nodded without hesitation. No applause, no fanfare, just action. The decision sent warmth through my chest, a lightness that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with freedom. I looked back one final time at Ellen and Ryan. Their faces were hollow, their bodies small against the sterile walls. For so long I had believed their shadows defined me. Now, stripped of power, they looked exactly as I had always felt around them, diminished. I turned toward the exit doors. The metal handles gleamed under fluorescent light, waiting for me to choose freedom. Each step toward them echoed like a drumbeat, steady and strong. But just as my fingers brushed the cool steel, a thought slithered in like smoke. If Ryan had siphoned money for years and Ellen had chosen silence, who else had stood behind them? Who else had smiled in boardrooms, raising glasses, while knowing the rot beneath the surface? The question lingered, sharp, unresolved. Complicity often hid in plain sight. Still, my chest expanded with a new breath, lighter than any I had taken in years. For the first time, I wasn't asking for a seat at their table. I had built my own. I whispered to myself as the doors swung open, my voice firm, certain, no more begging for love, I'm free. And in that moment I truly was. The weeks after the launch played out like a slow-motion storm, one headline at a time. Every morning when I unlocked my phone, the screen glowed with fresh chaos. News anchors spoke with the kind of grave cadence usually reserved for scandals of national importance. Ryan's photo appeared everywhere. His smirk now plastered beside words like embezzlement investigation, fraudulent accounts, and criminal probe. Clips of him, once hailed as a bold leader, replayed on loop, but stripped of glamour, his voice cracked, his charm dissolved into excuses. Corporate boards dropped him like dead weight, each resignation letter leaked and dissected by the press. His name had once been currency, now it was a warning. Ellen's downfall came quieter but sharper, like a knife slipped between ribs. Social pages that once celebrated her galas and luncheons fell silent. Invitations vanished. Friends whispered but rarely visited. Rumor had it she sold her estate, forced to carry boxes into a nondescript Oakland apartment. I pictured her there, her manicured fingers struggling to balance plastic grocery bags under fluorescent kitchen light. It startled me how much that image stung, but pity was short-lived. She had chosen her cruelty every time she turned away from me. Now the world had turned from her. While their lives crumbled, mine bloomed in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. Horizon AI, that was the new name I gave the company, stood like a fresh horizon itself, not just a rebrand but a rebirth. The office smelled of new beginnings, fresh paint, brewing coffee, the faint metallic tang of servers humming. Sunlight cut across polished concrete floors, warming glass walls etched with plans for expansion. Our mission was no longer a facade for investors. It was purposeful, tangible. We poured $2 million straight into scholarships for orphans, with the first cohort already sending thank you emails that made my chest ache with pride. I spent mornings walking the open-plan space, pausing by interns' desks to answer questions. Many of them were kids who'd grown up just like me, outsiders, overlooked but bursting with potential if only someone believed in them. Their laughter mixed with the tapping of keyboards, creating a rhythm more alive than any applause I'd once begged my family for. For the first time, I wasn't funding illusions. I was shaping futures. And yet, in quiet moments, echoes remained. One of those moments came when Zoe appeared in my doorway one late afternoon. The office was hushed, bathed in orange sunset spilling through the windows. She carried an envelope in her hand, its paper yellowed with age, edges frayed like it had traveled decades to reach me. Without speaking, she placed it gently on my desk. The looping handwriting across the front froze me in place. My grandmother's hand. The world seemed to dim around me as I traced the letters with my fingertips. My heart thudded slow and heavy. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of monitors. I broke the seal with trembling hands, and the scent of old paper rose, mingling with a faint perfume I hadn't smelled since childhood. Mia, the letter began in her unmistakable grace, I know the road ahead will not be kind. The family you were placed with carries shadows in their hearts, and they will try to push you aside. But you are more than their cruelty. You are my blood in spirit if not in name. That is why I place the clause within the company's framework. One day if they choose greed, it will be you who inherits the power they cannot respect. This is my way of protecting you when I no longer can. My throat tightened, my vision blurred with tears. She had seen it all before it even happened. The betrayals, the exclusion, the moment they would try to strip me of everything. She hadn't abandoned me. She had armed me. I whispered into the still air. She saw their cruelty coming, her love was real. The letter trembled in my hands as I folded it back, laying it gently on the desk like a sacred artifact. For so long I thought I was the outsider, an unwanted ghost in a family portrait. But she had seen me always. She had carved a space for me in the one place they couldn't erase. The foundation of the company itself. Just when I thought my heart couldn't take more, another envelope arrived days later. This one was slick, modern, and heavy, not fragile with time but burdened with fresh desperation. Ryan's scrawl bled across it, uneven and rushed. My hand hovered before I tore it open. Mia, it began, I was wrong, forgive me. I was jealous of you from the beginning. Your talent, your intelligence, the way people saw what I never had. I made mistakes, but I did it to keep us afloat, to keep the family name strong. Please help me. I don't want to lose everything. Each line was painted with manipulation, wrapped in half-truths and baited with guilt. Forgiveness dangled between the words. But beneath it, I heard the sneer I knew too well, the entitlement he could never bury. He hadn't changed. He had simply lost. I folded the letter slowly, sliding it back into its envelope. My chest didn't cave. My hands didn't shake. This time I was steady. Because I finally understood. His sorry wasn't for me, it was for himself. From the window of my office, the bay shimmered in the evening light, the water catching gold and silver as the sun descended. I pressed my palm against the glass, watching the horizon stretch wide and calm. For the first time my reflection didn't look small or desperate. It looked whole. And yet even in that stillness, doubt whispered. If Grandma had known enough to plant that clause, what else had she hidden? What other truths about my so-called family had she glimpsed and shielded me from? The question lingered, unresolved, humming like the final note of a song that refuses to fade. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Because I had already faced the storm of their cruelty. And I had survived. 3 years later I sit in my office at Horizon AI. The skyline of San Francisco stretched before me like a promise fulfilled. The glass walls around me rise from floor to ceiling, catching the last blaze of the sun as it dips toward the horizon. The bay glitters in molten streaks of gold, and gulls wheel silently against the crimson sky. The air smells faintly of espresso drifting from the cafe below, mingling with the sharper scent of fresh ink from documents scattered across my desk. I press my palm against the cool glass and watch my reflection merge with the city lights. For a moment, I simply breathe in the quiet hum of servers, the muted tap of keyboards, the life inside these walls that once felt like a distant dream. If someone had told me on that night, when Ryan canceled my ticket and left me stranded, luggage heavy at my feet, that their betrayal would be the reason I'd one day stand here, I would have laughed, bitter and broken. Back then I thought exile meant erasure. But now I see it clearly. Their cruelty wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. Still, sometimes the what-if questions slip in like fog off the bay. What if Ryan had shown me loyalty? What if Ellen had chosen honesty over greed? What if Lisa had looked at me even once and whispered, "You belong"? Would I still be orbiting their world, shrinking myself to fit into their definition of family? Would I still be funding their indulgences, mistaking scraps of attention for love? The thought chills me more than the betrayal itself. Because I know now, without their cruelty I might never have chosen myself. They thought they were cutting me off. But in truth they cut me free. Around me the office thrums with energy. From the open lounge, I hear soft laughter as interns swap stories over mugs of coffee. In a glass-walled meeting room, a team sketches algorithms across whiteboards, markers squeaking against the glossy surface. Keyboards tap steadily like rainfall on rooftops. Horizon AI isn't just a company. It's a sanctuary. On the far wall, a mural stretches wide, a horizon painted in deep reds and blazing golds. Beneath it in crisp white letters the words, "Family isn't blood, it's choice." Every employee who passes beneath those words carries the reminder. Every time I see it, I feel anchored. The scholarships we launched have grown beyond my wildest hopes. The first 2 million turned into 4, then more. Now young people who once had no path sit here as engineers, developers, and thinkers. Their faces glow in the light of monitors, their laughter echoing through these halls. When I mentor them, I see the version of myself that once begged to be seen, and I tell them the truth I wish someone had told me. You don't need to bleed yourself dry to earn love or respect. Watching them thrive feels like rewriting my own past line by line. And yet, mystery lingers even in this light. On my desk rests a simple oak frame holding my grandmother's letter. The paper is fragile now, its ink faded, but her words remain carved into my soul. She had seen their cruelty before it unfolded. She had left me armed with protection I didn't know I carried. I trace the loops of her handwriting and wonder, how much did she know? Did she imagine me here, looking out over this city, carrying a name and a company they once tried to erase from me? Did she see me building a home not bound by blood but by choice? I'll never know. And maybe that's the lesson. Life doesn't demand certainty. It demands courage. To walk forward even when the road is clouded. To keep choosing yourself even when the world insists you don't belong. The sunset deepens, streaking the bay in molten orange. My reflection on the glass burns brighter, shoulders squared, gaze steady. Inside, a voice rises. They thought they'd break me, but they built me stronger. I turn back to my desk, screens glowing with blueprints for what comes next. My future hums in every pixel, every line of code, every bright-eyed intern chasing possibility. And I think of you, the one listening to this story now. Maybe you've been called an outsider. Maybe betrayal hollowed you out. Maybe you've been told you'll never belong unless you surrender your worth. I know that ache. And I'm here to tell you, your worth isn't written in their acceptance. It isn't measured in their silence or cruelty. It lives in the moment you decide enough is enough. In the moment you choose yourself even if it means starting alone. Betrayal didn't end me. It liberated me. So if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, drop your story in the comments below. How did you stand up? How did you carve your place? Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated. And tell me, where are you watching from? Share your city, your time zone, your corner of the world. Let's build a community of chosen families, bound not by blood, but by love, by respect, by resilience. The last light slips beneath the horizon, leaving the bay shimmering like liquid fire. I take one deep breath and for the first time in years I don't just feel free. I feel whole.